Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, an opportunity to learn more about a historic and international incident initiated by locals. It's time for the Spirit of Our Ancestors Festival. This year's event will feature the stories of the slave ship Clotilda and the community of Africatown in a theatrical stage event titled An Ocean in My Bones, developed by playwright and award-winning director Terrence Spivey. Now, the one-act highlight is a prequel to the full-length stage play that will make its world premiere in Mobile 2 years from now. The festival on February the 12th will take place at the historic Mobile County Training School in Africatown. The school was founded by the descendants of the Clotilda. For those who may not be familiar with this incredible true story, the Clotilda was the last slave ship that illegally smuggled African captives to Mobile shortly before the Civil War. Now, according to the officials, the ship was burned to hide what was done. After extensive research, though, by local and national historians, as well as archaeologists, remains of the slave ship were discovered in the Mobile Delta. The discovery of the ship proved to be a lightning rod for what was for many locals a hidden and shameful secret. Since then, interest in creating a museum, symposiums, and festivals celebrating the lives of the Clotilda's captives and the Africatown descendants have captured now the international imagination. After years of work, the Africatown Heritage House Museum is another step closer to completion. Part of the prefabricated building was delivered to the site back in November, and work is underway right now to get it assembled. Construction of the building set to take several months, though, until it will be handed over to the History Museum of Mobile to install the exhibits. Officials are expecting the ribbon cutting to be sometime this year. Our guests this morning are the keynote speaker of the Spirits of Our Ancestors Festival, Dr. Joseph A. Brown, professor of Africana Studies at Southern Illinois University. He received a master's in Afro-American Studies and a PhD in American Studies at Yale. Also joining us this morning, playwright and award-winning director Terrence Spivey. The Cleveland-based Spivey's resume is extremely long and incredible to be recounted in all the detail here, but we can tell you, in addition to his national and international plays and performances, Spivey is the artistic associate of Mobile's Imani Community Theater and, of course, the author of the play An Ocean in My Bones. Find out more about the festival and, of course, how you can attend as well as Perspectives continues after this quick break. Our conversation this morning with Dr. Joseph A. Brown. Dr. Brown is the keynote speaker for the upcoming Spirit of Our Ancestors Festival that's scheduled here in Mobile. And Dr. Brown will be arriving here very shortly in the next couple of days or so to be a part of this program. Dr. Brown, your bio and resume is incredible. I want to share just a little bit for folks who may be meeting you for the first time. You received a master's in Afro-American Studies at Yale University, as well as a PhD there in American Studies at Yale University. You're also a Catholic priest, native of East St. Louis, Illinois, with an extensive academic and pastoral career as well. And to tie you to the Gulf Coast a little bit, you also taught at Xavier University in New Orleans for a few years before heading back up to the colder lands in Illinois. So we thank you so much this morning for being a part of this conversation. Let me ask you, you were selected as the festival's keynote speaker due to your extensive work and your vision for African ancestry. Tell us a bit about that.
From my very first day in graduate school at Yale back in 1979, I have studied much about traditional African cultures and how they were resilient enough to survive the Middle Passage. And contrary to what many stereotypes say about Black culture, those people who were enslaved, children, teenagers, young adults, men and women, did not lose their culture. It was not erased from them. They were building their own culture, even on the ships. In one of the great commentaries from Cujo Lewis, the book on Cujo Lewis by Zora Hurston, he says that on the ship they cried and cried and cried, and they turned it into song. My argument has been that turning it into song was the beginning of the building of Black culture with resistance and persistence. And that they could move out of the pain into something that they could utilize in order to survive the atrocities, the abuse, and the trauma. And so I have always studied, because my first teacher that first day in Yale, Robert Ferris Thompson, taught us about the sacred circle of the Congo cultures, where you are born, you become an adult, you grow into elder status, and when your spirit leaves your body, you become one of the living dead, and you are still taking care of the next generations. And every decision you make as an adult, you have to look to the past and to the future to make sure that what you're doing honors the past and protects the future. So that whole notion of ancestry is something that I have taught and lived and studied and learned that it's part of my life too.
Yes.
That the ancestors send you out to do a special task for the next generation. Our culture, our music, our history, our memoirs, they all tell us the same thing.
Let me get in here and ask you a question in reference to sharing that. And you mentioned one of the favorite people in your readings over the years. When did you first hear about the Clotilda and the Africatown story? How long ago?
Well, I've known something about the Clotilda. I can't tell you how long ago it was. But one of my former students is Dr. Kern Jackson at the University of South Alabama. He was in the first class I taught at the University of Virginia in 1984. By his junior year, he had started doing folklore anthropology with one of the best experts at the university or anywhere in the country. And he's never, ever shaken that, from his master's degree at Wisconsin to his PhD in folklore studies at Indiana University. And so when he moved back to Mobile, he was very much involved with Africatown. But he was involved with the persistence of Black culture. And you know, I know the people in Mobile don't get into competitions with other people, but he was one of the first people to explain to me that Mardi Gras started there, not in New Orleans. Right. So I just want you to know that I had somebody teaching me something about that entire culture of Africatown from 20-some years.
Right. So when you were invited to be the keynote for the festival this year, what were your thoughts? What were you thinking of doing here once you got here to share to those attending the festival?
Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, I've also been an ordained Catholic priest since 1972. So part of what I do culturally, professionally, in the pedagogical realm is to incorporate everything. I don't see distinctions and this is what over here, this is over there. So I'm really going to be trying to do the Sacrament of Confirmation. I think that in my role as teacher and as minister, I have to speak on behalf of those who went before us. But I'm so impressed with the descendants and their efforts to be really persistent in honoring the story of one of the most incredible moments. As someone has said in that wonderful documentary, Descendant, they were only enslaved people for maybe 5 years. They were free much longer than they were enslaved. And so they were bringing something fresh and vibrant. And they have been passing that on intergenerationally to today. And I just want to be able to stand there and say, as a stranger from elsewhere, I see who you are, I see where you've come from, I honor your ancestors, and I want to confirm you in your efforts.
You know, one of the things I enjoyed seeing in some of the writings about you is that you say from your earliest preschool days, you've been fascinated by the stories the old people told all around you. And of course, all of this was passed down orally.
Yes, it was. And that's one of the reasons why my students in my classes will say, Father Brown, get ready to tell another story. You're absolutely right. He is getting ready to tell another story. And I will do that in the middle of a sermon in church, and people go, well, all that made sense. Of course it did. My grandmothers both told me stories with pictures they had in the house. My father's mother was born in 1872 and did not die until 1977. She was 104 years old when she died. I grew up hearing her stories. And my mother's mother, same way, telling me stories. My mother and my father telling me stories. And because there was no such field as Black studies when I was a child,
yes,
I learned it the best way possible. When I went to graduate school at Yale, I carried 8 boxes of books with me and a legacy of my family. And that first class I mentioned before, when the teacher got up and started talking about Afro-American quilts, I had an epiphany, because my grandmother had given me one and told me, no matter what else happens, don't you ever get rid of this quilt. So in other words, I was wrapped in culture before I ever knew what culture was.
We have about a little less than a minute left, roughly. Tell us why we need to be there to hear your message at the festival.
Oh, I can't tell you why you need to listen to me, but you need to be there in order to support the people who are doing the heavy lifting and tell them that they cannot give up, because we are not going to leave them alone.
And Dr. Brown, it's been a pleasure meeting you, as well as our conversation this morning, and so much more that folk can have an opportunity to hear from you here at the festival. That you'll be joining us for the Spirit of Our Ancestors Festival. And thank you for this conversation and insight into why it is important, as well as why it's been a passion of yours for a lifetime.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, for asking me to share this.
Our conversation this morning with Mr. Terrence Spivey. He is an award-winning playwright and director, as well as writer. And just, Terrence, the list of things here on your resume are incredible. I want to share a little bit. You started out at Prairie View A&M University in Texas, a BA in Theater Arts, and you have worked with some of the well-known folks in the arts over the years: Spike Lee, Ruby Dee, Anita Baker, Leslie Uggams, Rudy Ray Moore, Richard Brooks, and Bill Cobb. I mean, just the list goes on and on. And I guess one of the things I wanted to mention for sure as well for you, in 2020, you were the director and writer of the premiere of the, is it Ma'afa?
Ma'afa, yes.
Ma'afa,
yes.
about the transatlantic slave trade at Cleveland's historical Olivet Institutional Baptist Church.
Yes.
And that ties into your time in Cleveland also as the artistic director of the oldest black theater in the country, the Karamu House. And I'm telling you, I'm just extremely glad to have you here and impressed with all the work you've done over, as we were talking about, 30-some years now.
Yes.
You've been out there making a name for yourself. But most importantly, when you read about you, you see the importance of what type of work you're doing and the stories that you're telling. And so that ties into why you're here in Mobile, because tied in with this Spirit of Ancestors 2022 Festival, you're doing a story, I guess you could say a featured presentation of stories of the slave ship Clotilda and Africa Town being brought to life in a short stage highlight titled An Ocean in My Bones. I love that title.
Thank you.
And you developed this from your, we were talking, your time of reading the books.
Yes.
And then, of course, once you started meeting the descendants, something happened. Tell us how it came together for you.
Yes. Thank you. I should have used my PR traveling around. It's most of a lot of times I can sit and articulate all the works I've done, and Ma'afa did the same thing to me as what's happening now. This is even deeper, because I'm actually connecting with the descendants of the ancestors, and the fact of knowing that none of us don't know our ancestors, but it's like a catharsis in a way for me. Like I mentioned earlier offset, I mentioned that the fact that it's spiritual, personal, historical, and the last was artistic. Normally, it's artistic would come first. That's what I'm about.
Right.
But it got to the point where with this, it became a little more personal for me.
This story moves you.
It moved me. It moved me even just talking to the descendants, Jocelyn Davis and all the others. One of them, I remember, they wanted to know, Cudjoe has more, he's more of a spotlight. We could see his words in the barracoon, his actual words. We don't have any quotes of any of our ancestors, I said, when you sit in the audience, you're going to hear your words come out of them from what your great-great and great-great-great have said to their grandmother, great-grandmother. Those, and tears, kind of, a little drop of tears came down our eyes. And they also hit me as well.
We're talking about the tree, the
tree, yes, the roots. I mean, the interesting thing, the development of the piece is really interesting and enticing because I've never really developed like that. I've directed works that we call verbatim plays, where you actually go out and direct, you go out and interview and record the people speaking, you actually put it in script, and we call it verbatim. And this is a little different because it's weaving some fictional, because for dramatic impact, some fictional off in there, but there's also the non-fiction, and the what if.
Let me ask you, how long ago did you come across this story? Because for some people, it's a new story. For others, they've been hearing about it over the years, even away from this area of the country.
Yes.
When did you first come across the story of the Clotilda?
Yes, I knew the Clotilda, like the Amistad, Henrietta, years ago, but I know the extension of it, of what was going on in Mobile. I found out the extension because of Greg Cyprian. 10 years ago, he came by, I was directing God's Trombones adaptation, a gospel musical, James Weldon Johnson's book. At Caramel, he came to see the play, blown away, and he said, we got to talk.
Right.
And he said, I'd like to get you to Mobile, Alabama. He got me here.
You were looking up at Greg, right?
Yes, right, yes. He got me here and drove me around. He said, this is Africa Town. I'm like, huh? And to be honest, I said, are you sure? Because I thought it was a set from a movie, because certain areas was very dilapidated. I saw some beautiful areas. I thought it was part of a film. I said, you joking? Because I saw parts of like a curtain or a blanket on the outside of a window frame.
Yes.
And I don't think, he said, somebody's living in there. I said, oh my God. He said, we got to do a story in a few more years on this. This was years ago.
Yeah, and Greg has been committed to theater here in this community for years.
Yes,
yeah, very committed.
And he's been, because we're working on something now, as I work at the Clotilda Descendants Association, we're working on, the Amani Community Theater Company.
Yes.
We're about to build. But fast forward, a year ago, Jocelyn Davis, the vice president of the Clotilda Descendants, she got in touch with me, and then of course Darren Patterson, and that's the rest was history of us coming together, and we was Zooming, and so yes.
Our time running fast on us. Tell us what we should expect to hear and see with this play.
It's a highlight. It's unconventional. It's not really a traditional play. You're not going to sit there and watch a Raising the Sun where they're having dialogue. They're going to be breaking the fourth wall. It's going to start off with the capture, and then on the ship. There's no built set. It's a highlight. So there's no set built. So it's going to depend on the lights, the sound, and also the actors to take us, to transport us from Dahomey to the ship to the resurrection in 2019, and that's when they come out like a Fields of Dreams. My goodness, looking forward to seeing. It's a highlight. It's the highlight.
I understand, Terrence, you have plans to take this to some HBCUs around the country.
Well, that's something with the CDA discussing that. I just put it together and I step back and see what happens. But that would be wonderful because here, both of us.
Yes, HBCU guys.
HBCU.
That's right.
Pro review and yes.
Well, let me ask you this: what happens after the festival? What are the plans after the festival so that more people can see your play?
Well, I guess that'll be something with CDA. They'll be able to explain all that. They are looking to have record possibly. One discussion was about it. One reason why it's a 45-minute version is because of my experience of doing outreach at Caramel. We used to take a 45-minute version of a play and let it go to schools, because schools tend to like 30, 45 minutes because of the attention span of the kids or the high schoolers, and they can detach and be, and travel.
How many performances will happen during the festival time?
I'm glad you asked that. Just found out the 12th, February 12th is already full. The 13th added. It's full.
Okay.
So I don't know what the plan. We got 3 more weeks to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen here.
And you mentioned schools, so maybe there's a chance we could take it to some schools before you leave the area.
That'd be nice.
Okay.
I would love to even just go out and just talk to schools too. Just talk
Yeah.
to the schools.
This is incredible.
About the commitment in art and commitment of life.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, we are looking forward to seeing what you have come up with, because your resume is incredible. You've done a lot of great work over the years and won a lot of awards for your work,
Rudy
too.
Ray Moore made it the list, son.
Okay, yeah, you know, I'm of that generation. We know Rudy Ray.
Oh, my goodness, okay.
Well, we thank you so much for joining and sharing
Thank
with
you
us
for the
today in this
invite.
conversation. And, of
Yes.
course, remind folk once again that you will be hosting 2 performances during the Spirit of Our Ancestors 2022 Festival. And both, unfortunately, for those who didn't get the tickets,
Yes.
both are sold out already. But
Yes.
stay tuned, because there may be opportunities for others to see this before things shut down for this part
Yes.
of the performance level.
Yes.
All right. Terrence Spivey, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you can also learn more about the festival by checking out the website, theclotildastory.com. In addition, you can also call the phone number you see there or the email on the screen as well for more information. Please note now the protocols: you must show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 48 hours of the February 12th event. If not, you will not be able to gain entry. Very familiar to our area, but in a new capacity. He served as our U.S. Congressman, a high-ranking University of Alabama official, and the Alabama governor's top aide. But last November, Joe Bonner was selected as South Alabama's new president. The next Saturday morning, our conversation with Joe Bonner on what's his vision and plans for the University of South Alabama. Well, please join us here next Saturday morning for Perspectives at 9 a.m. as we discuss important issues and seek solutions. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks for watching Fox 10 News. Watch us live wherever you are, on our mobile, our streaming news app, and you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.